Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of Jets Life Podcast. And here we are yet again on a Monday morning or Monday afternoon at this point, with not much to be thrilled about. It's the NFL, and we have an offense that continues to struggle, continues to, um, fail in critical times in this game, continues to make backbreaking mistakes. It just, the story goes on and on. It's a repetitive process here with this team. They go against the Falcons, a team who also um, struggled on offense yesterday, and find a way to lose this game by a score of 13-8. When you look at that score, you're like 8 points. While this offense actually shows some improvement, but those 8 points, two of them were gifted by the defense thanks to an outstanding play by both Quentin Williams and Ashton Davis, who came in and was able to tackle Bijan Robinson in the end zone. Um, a lot of the same situation here. There's not a capable quarterback on this roster, at least active at this point in time. I know Rodgers is out there practicing, and there's some semblance of possibility he could come back before the year is over. But at this point, the icing is on the cake on this season. Um, that loss yesterday makes it to where the Jets' best case scenario um, is that they would end the season 9-8. And when you look at the landscape of the AFC, chances are that's just not going to be enough. No miracle comeback here for Rodgers. It's unfortunate. I mean, if he really is on track to where it would have been possible for him to make a comeback, this entire team and this entire front office, this entire leadership group for this organization has failed this franchise and its fan base. It is so unfortunate that a season, with so much hype, so much optimism by this fan base, by this, entire organization from leadership down, for them to just basically punt on the season because of an injury that happened 4 plays into the opening game. It's just such an unfortunate, you know, series of events. I mean, the fact that, say what you want about the Zach Wilson situation. A lot of us fans, myself included, just wanted to see, is this really as bad as it can be, or is it a result of Zach Wilson, who we all know, based on what we saw from him in the first 2 seasons, just didn't have, you know, that it factor to him. It wasn't, Mike White came in. It's been well documented. The players that came in while Zach Wilson missed time over the past couple of years came in and were able to produce, um, with this basically the same offense, more or less, around them. So, I mean, I don't really blame any Jet fans, and I'm going to, kind of claim the fact that we wanted to see something else. If you would have told me before the season started that those options would be Tim Boyle and Trevor Simeon, um, I could have told you more or less what we would be looking at this point in the season. The fact that we have 4 wins with this group of quarterbacks playing is, a miracle in its own right. It just goes to show the level of the defense's play, considering the fact that a lot of these games were won in low scoring affairs. I think the only game we've won where we've kind of scored a lot of points was that game against Denver. And we see what Denver's become at this point. They're starting to turn that corner and win some games in a row. They did lose yesterday to Houston, but it just goes to show how great this defense is. And for us to be wasting a year of a lot of these players kind of moving forward. You look at Sauce Gardner, you look at DJ Reed, you look at Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff. I mean, the list goes on and on. Quincy Williams, all these players that are here on reasonable contracts, and we're just going to waste this season because of our quarterback going down. Yes, I do understand that this situation would occur with nearly every team. I mean, say what you want about Zach Taylor with the Bengals, his record without Joe Burrow, it's terrible. I understand, but that the Jets had after week 1 to come up with a plan. Went through week 2, Zach had his 3 interception game against Dallas, went against New England. He struggled there as well. At some point within those first 3 weeks, there should have been a plan in place, and there should have been a quarterback brought in that could have provided some sort of light. Um, I don't I obviously understand you're not gonna get a quarterback the stature of Aaron Rodgers, and I know that that wasn't gonna happen. Um, but there are plenty of options that were out there that could have been better. Been well documented. Dobbs, his signing with Arizona, what he did for that team. He only won 1 game, but he fought every game. He was a quarterback that looked like he was doing something progressive every week. I know he had a bad game last week against the Bears. Um, that's to be expected. But at least when he was in there, there was a functioning process. There was an offense that was moving the football at times. It just looked like NFL football. What the Jets are doing is not that. It is awful from all accounts. And yes, it is not just the quarterback position, it is other areas as well. Um, we all know about how we get into the red zone and there's a penalty or there's a flag, there's a false start, there's a drop pass, there's something stupid that happens almost every freaking drive that there's any progress, and that's why, kicking field goals is our version of a touchdown. This is just terrible. And it's not just the quarterback, obviously. It really at this point, and I've been a huge supporter of Robert Saleh, and although I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, I just want everyone to understand that no matter what we say, Robert Saleh will be here. Joe Douglas will be here. Nate Hackett will be here. This entire coaching staff is going to be here. If they're going to do anything, they might. I don't know. They might do something with a coach on the staff. Um, kind of look at their quarterback coach potentially. I don't think they'll do it. He's a young guy. It sounds like Robert Saleh likes him. He talks about him as a future potential offensive coordinator. I don't know how anybody on the staff could ever get a job as an offensive coordinator. This is a historically terrible offense. You cannot make up what this team does on a weekly basis. It's just incredible. I just have nothing else to say. And we've reached that point in the season where teams are doing what we've all expected them to do from the get go with Zach Wilson at the quarterback, and now with Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian. Yesterday literally looked like the Jets were basically picking fans from the stadium saying who wants to play quarterback. At that point in the game, it just seemed like they were just like kind of rolling with whatever they could. I don't know what this team has in plans for the rest of the year, but whatever it is, they're not going to score points. It won't matter if it's Zach Wilson. It won't matter if it's Tim Boyle. It won't matter if it's Trevor Siemian. It won't matter if it's it won't matter who it is. These guys are not good. We can argue all we want about should Zach Wilson be playing, should Tim Boyle be playing, should they bring back Chris Trevor? We can argue it to the moon. It doesn't matter. My opinion, based on what we've seen from Tim Boyle and based on what we've seen from um, Trevor Siemian in his limited action, it should be Zach. But that does not move the needle. It doesn't. Instead of scoring 8 points, maybe we score 10. It's not gonna do anything for this team. It it is so crazy that this team is just so inept on offense that I have concerns of what this offense will be next year. Major concerns. When you look at this offense as a whole and you go through the players that are going to be here next year, you know, you go down the line and you say, okay, who's our starting caliber players? And with Mackay being a free agent, I would hope and assume that the Jets would make an effort to bring him back. I don't think he's going to want, or not that he's not going to want, I don't think he's going to get top level money, although he has had a great season this year. He has stayed healthy for the most part. Missed the Miami game. I think that was the only game he missed this year. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but he's hasn't had that issue where in his rookie year where he was in and out of a lot of games. I mean, there was a game where he kind of injured himself a little bit, but he got back out there. Makai's definitely one of the players that he's not on my list currently what I was going to talk about, but that's a player that I would hope the Jets would bring back and pair with a potentially a first round offensive lineman to go on the other side. Because then if that happens, Kind of going with my list here, you would have a full slate of offensive linemen. Um, but again, let me just go through this list really quick as far as offensive players on the roster and that will be on the roster next year that I consider starting caliber players that we can build around. Laken Tomlinson's one. I know he's not been great. He's not lived up to his contract, but the guy plays all the time. He's out there all the time. Um, there's something to be said about that. And I don't think it's a smart decision here, especially with his cap number. I think he's making 18 million next year. The Jets could cut him, and I think about half his contract would be dead money. So it doesn't make sense to cut a player and pay his half a salary. So I assume he'll be back. And with his durability and his availability, especially with the state of this offensive line and how many guys get injured every year, it seems like somebody who plays a majority of the games is somebody you definitely want to keep around. So I expect him to be back and somebody you can build around. Sticking with the offensive line, obviously AVT playing the right guard side and Joe Tippmann at center. You have your your interior offensive line all set. You bring back Mackay, that's 4 out of 5, and you know the first round tackle um, would give you that starting five. That's your front wall in front of Aaron Rodgers. As far as other players here, and now Rodgers was one of mine on the list. Another player, skill player here, obviously the top of the line, Garrett Wilson. Um, this guy represents leadership, I think, more than we've seen out of an offensive player in a very, very long time. Um, he hates the losing. He's miserable by it. And you'll get plenty of snips out there that make it seem like he's frustrated with the situation of the team itself. But the guy sounds like a player that, although he hates what's going on right now, he wants to be a reason why it gets fixed, why it turns around. This is very different than players in the past who preached that this was going to be different to eventually, when things got messy, you know, going haywire in the organization, forcing his way out. If you're a Jeff fan, you understand who I'm talking about. That is not Garrett Wilson. That is not AVT, although he's not playing right now, but we haven't heard from him in a little while. These are players that will do whatever it's going to take to turn this thing around. But it's not just them. Garrett Wilson is the only receiver on my list of players that, and actually, I should throw Xavier Gibson on there. That guy, I mean, say what you want. I think the Jets have their wide receiver three. They're like whatever you want to call him. Maybe like a 3 or 4, kind of in and out slot player. He is that player for them. I mean, when the Jets needed a play downfield, they were going to him. When they wanted some extra yards on a pitch or a toss type of play, they were going to him. When they got the ball in his hands, he would make a guy miss and get some yards. In some cases, not enough, but the guy makes plays. So I will actually throw him on the list too, as far as a player that can build around. But the key here for the Jets is they really need more wide receiver help. They need somebody. Alan Lazard, um, 4 years, $11 million per year, $44 million in total. I think the Jets can get out of it after next year and um, kind of walk away with a $6 million dead cap hit. If he doesn't turn this thing around, that's definitely going to be on the table. We have a lot of time. Rodgers should be back next year. I would assume they'll do whatever possible to try and keep him around for an extended period of time. But the way things are going for him, the guy doesn't get open on his own. He's in an ideal world, he would be kind of your secondary slot, kind of pair him against Xavier Gibson. I think Xavier Gibson kind of give you that burst of the big play ability when you're kind of in between the 20s. He's a player like that. When you get inside the 20, that's where Alan Lazard could come in. Alan Lazard does have that skill set to stretch the field a little bit too. We've seen that with his time in Green Bay, not a 1,000-yard receiver type of player, but somebody who comes in as a situational role. But what the Jets desperately need is they need a number 2 receiver or a secondary number 1 receiver. That's what the NFL is turning into, and the Jets don't have that. All they have right now is Garrett Wilson and a bunch of other players. That's all they have at receiver. And the issue with that is, as great as Garrett Wilson has been playing, it's not being seen. It's not you cannot look at the stat line and say Garrett Wilson is a elite receiver. If you're doing that, you're not doing any justice to the player himself. The guy gets open, you know, all the time when he has on one-on-one coverage. But the problem is he's not seeing a lot of one-on-one coverage because everyone knows that the way to stop this team is one, load the box, two, cover Garrett Wilson and double cover him or triple cover him, whatever it takes. Because even that in some of those cases, he'll find a way to get the ball down. We saw a number of plays yesterday where it looked like he was blanketed and he made a fantastic catch. And that's what it takes for him. You look at his stats yesterday. I think he had 3 catches, 50 yards. Not great by any means, but how many times this guy has got to make a miraculous catch in order just to get on the stat sheet? It's just ridiculous. There's got to be more of an emphasis on, you know, creating one-on-one opportunities for him. Put him in the slot. You see a lot of teams around the NFL, like, I mean, you look at what the Dolphins do with Tyreek. They're constantly moving him around the formation. They're constantly moving him into the slot. They're doing different things, get him lined up with, you know, in situations where he can thrive. And Tyreek Hill's a great athlete, and he's going to thrive against basically anybody you put on him. Similar situation with Justin Jefferson. They move him around a lot. You look at Devontae Adams. What was done with him for some time with the Raiders? They were moving him around, getting him into favorable matchups. He would execute and he would produce. This entire receiving core needs to be rehauled. Whether it's bringing in Devontae Adams, which I have obviously I think that's something that could happen. Um, but when you look at the shape of the Jets draft capital, are they going to surrender future picks? Because chances are you're going to need that first round pick to fix this offensive line and bringing in that fifth player or fourth offensive lineman. Obviously, I would hope the Jets address one of the offensive tackle spots in free agency with whoever the best options are out there. I was not expecting in early December to be looking at free agent offensive tackles, but that's where we're at. Um, I'll do a show later on to talk more into details about who those players may be. Um, but that first round pick, I would definitely expect would want to be an offensive tackle. Do you do kind of a pick swap trade? I'm not sure where the Raiders are picking right now, but do something where I think the Bills did it the year they drafted Josh Allen, where they were picking somewhere in the 20s. They traded I forget who the offense tackle was, but they traded an offense tackle and whatever pick they had, and were able to get to like pick 13 or whatever it was, and then on draft day, they went from 13 to 7 to pick Allen. Is that something that maybe the Jets can kind of entice the Raiders with, especially if the Raiders are in the market for a quarterback? I don't know if the Jets will be picking in the top 2 or 3, whatever it is, but um, if they are, definitely, in a situation where if there's a team that wants a quarterback, make that trade back type of situation, and the Raiders would be a good target. You could do something where you trade that 3rd pick and send that to the Raiders for Devontae Adams and whatever pick they have. Obviously, I would assume that there'd be a little bit more kind of traction that would go in and out with that type of trade. But that would be like your framework for a trade. You would get your number one receiver. If you don't have to drop too far back, you can potentially get an offense tackle, or you could do something similar to what Arizona did last year, where they traded out from 3 and then at some point, I forget when, but they drafted up and got their offensive tackle. So it was almost like an in and out type of situation in order to get the player that they wanted. Um, that's something that's definitely in store for the Jets if that were to happen. If somehow Joe Douglas was able to turn whatever pick they have into Devontae Adams and an offense and one of the top few offense tackles in this draft, that would be an absolute home run. That would be a lot a lot of movement in the direction of fixing this offense and making this a lot better. As I was mentioning earlier, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, and I say Tyler Conklin just because he's the guy that makes plays on this offense. Um, those are really your top pass catchers, and then throwing in Xavier Gibson as a situational player. But as far as every down um, starting level talent, you're talking Lakin Tomlinson, Rogers, Titman, AVT, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, and Conklin. 7 players. That's a majority of your starters. Obviously, you need those role players, but definitely got to get us a wide receiver in here. Definitely have got to get those 2 offensive tackles. figured out. And if that happens, you really have the framework of what could be an offense that can rebound next year. But as we stand right now, um, it's just not fun to watch. I feel bad for any Jet fan who had to go through that misery of paying for that terrible weather just to watch a game that ends 13-8 and the team that scores 13 points not being the home team. It's just this is way too frequent. This is this is a fan base that really just like kind of kind of got shot in the back a little bit here with the way the season went. So much hype, so much optimism. It's like as soon as that season finale of Hard Knocks hit, the season went downhill. Got into that opening game, Rodgers goes down, we come away with a win, and it's just been downhill from there. We had a little bit of a uptick, just when Jet fans were going out. It's like that meme, I was out and then they pulled me back in type of thing. That's exactly what happened here. We got pulled back in thinking that something would be possible. We beat the Eagles. We were the only team that beat the Eagles until yesterday with the 49ers big win against the Eagles. We were the only blemish on the Eagles record after a game where DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner didn't even play in the secondary. That going into that game, it looked like it was going to be just a blowout by all accounts. And this Jets defense, again, as they do almost every week, and it just the fact that it seems like this defense lives on the field because they're playing like 55 minutes a game, it seems. And I will give Boyle a little credit here that he was able to like extend drives and make them. There was a couple of 10 play drives yesterday, still resulted in not much of anything. Um, but a majority of the season, it seems like the Jets defense has been on the field like 45 minutes a game, and the fact that they're on the field for that long and are still able to hold teams down to limited points. They've had a couple of bad games. Obviously, we've obviously know the Buffalo game, the Miami game. Those are basically the kind of the bad games on their records. I know Dallas, the second game of the year I mentioned earlier, was a bad one as well, overall. But this defense is just like proving time and time again. And you know, a lot of people go out there and they talk about this defense is doing great. But what normally happens is when defense is doing great and the offense, and all of a sudden a good offense comes around, the defense starts to take a step back. It just doesn't seem like that philosophy would work with this team, because a lot of times when that happens, the reasoning for the defense typically taking step back is because they're starting to get on the field a lot more, because offense is scoring quickly, and now the defense is on the field a lot more frequently because the offense is so good and the offense is high powered and they're scoring a lot of points, blah blah blah. That isn't the case because the Jets are doing the exact opposite. The Jets are finding somehow to make the Jets play as a top five offense defense, um, because they're on the field so much, because the Jets are so damn bad at offense. The Jets are so bad at offense that every drive is like a 3 and out, it seems like. And that's what it's been like for this team for quite some time. And this defense is on the field. And when you look back at those Buffalo Miami games, give credit to Buffalo, Miami, Buffalo with their new offensive coordinator that game, first time there, Miami, um, using the run to really just grind out that victory. The Jets defense was gassed. You can just see it. And now with this week of extra time to kind of prepare for this week, um, against the Falcons, um, they had a little bit of rest, able to kind of get back out there and get back to their normal kind of progress. I expect kind of a lot similar, with these next few games. Well, actually, next game against Houston could be a messy one, and then I think we fall against again with a game down in Miami. Um, so maybe not entirely the case, as far as getting a chance to take a deep breath, but um, definitely those extra days of rest after that last Miami game gave this team a little bit of an opportunity to kind of rebound with a good defensive performance. I mean, what else can you really say? I spent a lot of time talking about this offense. What else can you really say about this defense? Every single player on this defense deserves an opportunity to be back next year. I mean, I just there's not many areas that you can argue about this defense. The one area that I think that we've seen some issues with is their run defense hasn't been the greatest. Um, every team's going to have a flaw. Um, usually, the teams that allow a lot of running yards aren't great defenses, but this defense has the ability to kind of you know hunker down a little bit, kind of allow the teams to kind of chip and chip and dime down the field, whatever, and get whatever yards, and then all of a sudden kind of become stiff once they kind of get into that area of like that 50-yard line, 40-yard line into the red zone. Those are that's where his defense kind of excels. So if there's anything I would say from a defensive side for what we can expect next year would be get somebody in there to help out on running down, so it's not just Quinn Williams that has to make a play on the interior. I know we had Al Woods in here for a little bit. He was kind of supposed to be that kind of run stuffing type of player, and then he went down with an injury. So I would expect Jets to kind of look into that area to kind of help this defensive line from a rushing standpoint. But I mean, go down the line of this entire defense. I mean, Jermaine Johnson has been outstanding this season, quietly at 6.5 sacks on the season. Would love to see him hit his milestone of a 10 sack season. It's gonna cut tight. 5 games left. He's about 2/3 of the way there. We're 2/3 through the season, so if he's gonna do it, you'd have to stick on this pace and actually probably go up a little bit on that pace to get there. But definitely rooting for him to hit that milestone because he's a player. I mean, it's just outstanding to see what he's been doing. I mean, he wins with speed. He wins with power. He wins so many different ways. Um, and he's only in his second season. He's only going to get better. We saw it in college. I mean, the guy started in junior college, worked his way to Georgia, got to Florida State as a full time starter, and really is kind of every season's been building block for him as far as getting better. Last season he had a good season as a role player, as a limited snap kind of guy. This season he's gotten his opportunity as a higher snap count, so more opportunities in critical downs, and he's taken advantage of those. I expect next year just another building season for him. I mentioned Quentin Williams, just his greatness on the interior. It just he's not having the season he had last year where he had 10 sacks. But the guy makes the statement all game long. He gets triple teamed, he gets double teamed constantly because teams know that this guy in the interior, obviously he's not in the realm of Aaron Donald yet, as far as like what Aaron Donald was, but he's pretty damn close to, some of those higher names up there, Chris Jones, etc. He's that type of player, and that's why the Jets paid him. That's why he's a player that's one of my favorites. That's why I bought his jersey when I got the what they call it, the legacy jerseys, the old fashioned jerseys. That's why I got his name on it because he's a guy that's just somebody who I really want to be here for the long term, and he will be. Um, Bryce Huff, I know he's a free agent this year. Kind of a tough situation with him. Do the Jets tag him? Um, is it going to be a situation where they have an option where they tag Bryce Huff or Mackay? Is it a tag and trade type of situation? A lot of different scenarios there to go with Bryce Huff, but he's a player that I would love to have back. JFM on the defensive line, and the list goes on. Quincy Williams, CJ Mosley, the entire secondary. Sauce, DJ Reed, Michael Carter, Ashton Davis has kind of put himself out there as a valuable player. I think that's a large piece to why the Jets were able to allow Adrian Amos to walk out. Part ways. I think was the word they used, mutually part ways. You know, it's it's a great team. It really is. It just has such a there's a bad apple in this organization. It's just and that's the quarterback position. This you know huge problem. And is Aaron Rodgers enough to fix it? I would like to say yes, but there's definitely a lot more things that need to be done. This offseason is has got to be that push the cards into the middle of the table type of situation. It's got to be do whatever it takes to improve every position on this roster that needs to be improved. Um, I like Will McDonald as a player, he's kind of shown flashes, but I look back at that pick a little bit and say, in a win now window, why are we wasting that pick on a player that wasn't really going to play this year? Um, it's a little bit alarming, um, to say the least. He's like I say, shown flashes. He's a good player. He's not out there frequently enough to make a difference. He's, I look at the alternative, and I was a player that I was pounding the table for a little bit. Jackson Smith and Jigba was the player that I really thought if he's there, which I didn't think he was going to be there, but if he is there, you take him or an offensive tackle. And when all four offensive tackles went off the board, part of me got a little excited about it because I didn't really want the fourth offensive tackle over the best wide receiver, but I would have understood for sure. So when it got to that point where all four offensive tackles are gone, I kind of got excited. It's like an obvious pick here now. Got to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. They had the kid, what was it, Kyle, come out there, do the Jets chant, pump it up. I was super excited, ready for it to be a difference maker on offense. Someone Aaron Rodgers would be throwing touchdowns to pair up with Garrett Wilson, and it was a defensive player. It kind of mirrored what the Packers have been doing with Aaron Rodgers for such a long time. Of first round pick, there's a great offensive player available, but let's pick a defensive player. That's kind of where I was at with that. So that's kind of where I stand here. It just the offense is terrible. It's brutal to watch. It's uh, almost borderline depressing to to watch how awful this offense can be. And every week it's like they set their own like marks of like what can we do worse this week to prove to this fan base how bad this offense is. It's again, it's failure by this entire organization from top to bottom. They failed this fan base by just not having proper contingencies in place. Um, and it's something that I do hope they go into next offseason. And I mean, obviously, like I said, this entire regime is most likely going to be here, barring something catastrophic. Which I mean, it's getting there. It really is. I never kind of thought that it would be possible for this coaching staff to not be here, for Joe Douglas to not be here, and I still don't think it will happen just because of the Aaron Rodgers situation. But when you get to this point here and you've lost count here, 5 straight games, is it? Whatever it is, whatever it's been. When gotten to this point, you've lost 5 straight games and there's 5 to go and none of them look winnable really. I mean, maybe New England, maybe the Commanders. They're not winning against Houston. I just can't see it. They're not winning against Miami, and Miami don't see it. Um, Browns could be winnable too. I only say that because they're not great teams. I fully expect the Jets to lose to the Browns. I mean, Miles Garrett against whoever the whoever the quarterback is, and we see how bad these quarterbacks are from a pocket awareness standpoint against not great pass rushers. Could you just imagine what Miles Garrett might have like 5 sacks that game? It just it's going to be brutal. Um, but then again, it's the NFL, so you get shocked all the time. You could be shut out from a sack standpoint. But I don't think that's going to be the case. So look at the schedule. Like I said, 5 games left. Houston probably lost. Miami likely lost. Um, as I said, the Browns likely lost at best, winning 2 games, one against New England um, in a tank situation. And put it out there here. New England against Jets. I mean, Jets still have that crazy ass losing streak of not being able to beat New England. And as bad as New England's been, that defense is still it's still been fantastic these last few games. I mean, you have 10 points to the Giants last week. You have 6 points to San Diego this week. San Diego. I mean, that's that's a pretty damn good offense. A lot better than ours. They get up 6 to San Diego or San Diego. I still the old fan of me. The Chargers held the Chargers to 6 points. I mean, if they held them to 6 points, I don't even want to. I may just not watch that game. Um, Although it might be a tank situation. But it's just this season isn't going to get any better. It's already over. At this point, it's really tankathon season. Look at the draft. Look at these players. Get a little interest in some of these players. Run your draft simulators. Do all that stuff. But it's just so unfortunate that we reached a point here in early December, a year after our goal was to play meaningful games in December, and we are out of it. And really, we were out of it before December started. Let's be honest. But you look at this front office, you look at this coaching staff, and you know your actions proved that you punted on the season. And for a fan base that paid premium prices for tickets this year as a result of the off-season acquisitions, bring in Rodgers, those ticket sales, they went up. Those Everything increased. But unfortunately for this fan base, the product on the field did not. From an offensive standpoint, I will give every ounce of credit to the defense. It has been outstanding. I will give my little pieces of credit to players on this offense that appear to be trying, fighting, doing whatever it takes. But the quarterback position has been anemic this season. It has been awful. It needs to be better next year. From a backup standpoint, we cannot have another situation where if Aaron Rodgers has to miss any time, that we are playing to win by 3 every game, win by score 3-0. It seemed like at some point in time, the only chance the Jets had to win yesterday was if they held the Falcons to 0 with that 2-0 win, with just a safety. Um, but yeah, very unfortunate. Jet fans just kinda keep grinding. It reached the season's reached a point where it's about next season and what this team can be next year. But it's gotta be an all-in type of situation. You gotta push those cards into the table and do whatever it takes. If you're gonna bring in Devontae Adams, bring him in. If you're gonna bring in Mike Evans, who's a free agent, I don't think he wants to leave Tampa, but he'll be a free agent. Go after him. Bring him in. Do whatever it takes to make sure that this next season is there to win. Because if you don't, everybody will be out of this building next year. There will be no one that survives it. If next season is like this, I don't want to hear anything about there was cadence issues, that you built this offense around one player, and when that player went down, you haven't been able to fix it. It's freaking week, what is it, 12 or 13? I don't even care anymore. You've had plenty of time to figure out your contingencies, figure out your offense. You've had plenty of time to do it. You're stubborn, didn't move on from Zach early in the season. You stuck with this Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian experiment. Everything that you've done has failed. This offense is putrid. It is awful. And the names stamped on the front of it are Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, Nathaniel Hackett, and Woody Johnson. The 4 leaders of this organization and offense have failed this fan base by not caring enough to replace Zach Wilson earlier in the season and looking for somebody outside the building that can help. Tim Boyle was not it. Trevor Siemian was not it. And the biggest question as we go into next offseason is, are these guys the ones that are going to turn this franchise around? Jets fans, really appreciate you taking the time to listen. It's terrible out there. It's awful. And I'm not even talking about the weather. It's rough to be a fan of this team right now. You know, you watch other teams score touchdowns, and this team can't even get a sniff of the red zone. It seems like it's just been awful, terrible. Every negative word you can use to describe what a NFL season could be, and that's what the Jets offense is. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for joining. And let's go Jets. Hopefully, these last 5 games Give us something to cheer about, at least something to get excited about. Maybe we'll score a touchdown or two. Who knows? Thank you for joining and have a great day.